Question is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Londonderry.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to speak on the Greater Sydney Commission Bill, and I echo the comments of the opposition leader who spoke yesterday, of course, and spoke about the opposition's long-standing commitment to the creation of a single authority to plan for the sustainable growth of our city. Indeed, the opposition went to the last election in March with the policy that a Labor government would create a powerful Greater Sydney Commission sitting at the very centre of government, reporting to the Premier and reporting to both Houses of Parliament annually. This bill does create that Greater Sydney Commission, perhaps not of the scale that the opposition would like the Commission to have, but of course it is a good start, and a start that many speakers have said in contributing to this legislation that the Labor opposition will support in this Parliament, of course. I very much look forward to seeing the rollout of this much-needed new approach to planning in Sydney. Speaker, as has been said, this bill will create a New South Wales government agency that will be tasked with planning and development in the Sydney region. This bill will provide for the constitution of Sydney planning panels for the Greater Sydney region, which will operate as joint planning panels under the EPA Act. As a member of this place from the region of Greater Western Sydney, I can safely say that I do believe that this Commission does have the potential to have a positive impact on the region. I come from and represent a part of Sydney where growth is happening every day, and it is a huge opportunity for our economy, but also a challenge that must be acknowledged and addressed by the government. We must get the planning right and have the benefits flow accordingly. And indeed, as the Minister has said, the establishment of the Greater Sydney Commission recognises the importance of getting the planning right in our city. This Commission will ensure that as our city grows, growth is managed in a holistic way so that we can extract all of the possible benefits that Sydney has to offer as a global city. Our approach to planning must be comparable with other global cities, and that is what this Commission will aim to achieve. Indeed, this body will be similar to other worldwide planning authorities like the Greater London Authority. Speaker, in the next 20 years, as is often said in this debate, Sydney's population is projected to grow by more than 1.6 million, a million of this growth projected to occur in Western Sydney, with all the implications, the serious implications that this has for public policy, including the areas of housing, education, transport and planning. As I have said many, many times in my 6 months in this chamber, one of the largest public policy challenges facing Sydney is just how best to manage the population and housing growth explosion that is happening in the Greater West of Sydney. We must ensure that where new houses are being developed, the government is matching that growth with adequate services. We must ensure that where we are seeing tens of thousands of new people move into one area, the government agencies are equipped to handle the growing demand. Speaker, I note in the Minister's speech that this Commission will integrate planning decisions with local government, and I'm very much looking forward to see how this, in fact, will be implemented in practice. Speaker, a suburb that might be well known to members in this place in my electorate, the suburb of Jordan Springs, I view as a real microcosm of some of these challenges that we're talking about as part of this bill. It's an example of the enormous growth happening in some parts of Sydney. Speaker, it is estimated that when every construction of every dwelling is complete in this suburb in my electorate, it will be home to an estimated 6,500 residents. It's one of Western Sydney's fastest selling suburbs and a place as a local member that I've come to know very well. As many members would know, one of my biggest priorities as the local member in this place representing that suburb is in fact holding the government to account on its promise to deliver the public school in Jordan Springs ahead of its original timeline, which was promised during the election by both major parties to be delivered in this term of this government. Speaker, I would personally hope, and I know my community would hope also, that the Greater Sydney Commission would actually be looking at these types of issues so that New South Wales government agencies and departments can work holistically, which at the end of the day is the theory behind this, to ensure that planning and development is adequately met with services. It is just no good when the left-handed government is not communicating with the right. We need to make sure that the Commission is able to meet these challenges and bring New South Wales government agencies together to ensure sustainable and livable development for Greater Sydney. The Minister has said that it's critical to the Commission's success to ensure it engages and collaborate with government departments and agencies, and that's what I'm talking about, Speaker. I cannot emphasise just how important enough this is for Greater Western Sydney. Land use and infrastructure planning is going to be just so important to this Commission, but I'd also hope that this strategy also includes planning for services that families so desperately need, including education and health services, as said by other members in contributing to this debate. Silo departments that don't work together must be forced to acknowledge the long-term challenges of this city. That is why I believe there's almost uniform consensus on the creation of this Commission, because for too long the whole of government approach to Sydney has been lacking, and it is being felt every day in our communities. All interests and needs must be recognised when it comes to planning. Speaker, in my mind, perhaps the most important thing that can be done to sustainably grow Sydney must surely lie in the creation of jobs in Western Sydney. In fact, in my inaugural speech, I spoke about the ever-increasing jobs deficit that's being felt so palpably on Sydney's outskirts. The reality is that tens of thousands of people from our city's outer suburban fringe travel from west to east for work, so they can feed their families and pay their mortgage, and then back again to get home. This is just not a sustainable way for a global city to be operating. In Penrith City alone, this number is estimated to be a staggering 65,000. As Opposition Leader Luke Foley said, it is a threat to Sydney's livability and it is a drain on our productivity. And every single Sydney-sider knows what that means to our roads and to our public transport infrastructure. Centres like Penrith and Blacktown must become employment hubs, and the Greater Sydney Commission must enable this to happen. It must happen for Sydney's future. Of course, when talking about Sydney's long-term planning, we must address the dual issues of housing supply and housing affordability. While the government must be commended for aiming to increase housing supply, in my view, and therefore opportunities for thousands of more people to live in New South Wales, we really must see a genuine attempt to ensure infrastructure is matched with this growth. Of course, it cannot go unacknowledged by me as the member for Londonderry that the lion's share of new housing approvals are and will be and continue to be in the outer suburbs, places that traditionally are not planned strategically, leaving residents living hours and hours away from their work, with poor public transport options, and that's really putting it quite generously, and subsequently time away from their families and even poorer health outcomes. So there's a really serious impacts that are being felt in many of our communities. Speaker, the Greater Sydney Commission, I believe, as many speakers and members have said previously, it will be a welcome step in the move towards properly strategic planning for a growing global Sydney. And of course, in my interest and the interest of my community, the rapidly growing western suburbs. Let's see how it works, but a shared vision that both the government and the opposition are signed up to is, I suppose, an opportune beginning. It's a rare thing and something that I will be watching with continued scrutiny on behalf of my community.